Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, the bicycle industry podcast that brings retailers, vendors, advocates, and thought leaders to the mic for honest discussions about the latest issues facing retailers while taking an in-depth look at the person within the profession.
All right, listeners, we are back. It's your friends, Brian and Heather. It's the Retail Design Flex.
Woohoo!
No, I'm so excited. It's my favorite episode. It's our ongoing podcast feature where we're talking specifically about store design, remodeling, and merchandising. And this is produced in partnership with Fixture Lab. Brian is amazing. Brian, welcome back.
Why, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here. All right, listeners, you know, if you've been listening, that Fixture Lab has been in bike shop design and merchandising for years. Brian is amazing. He works with retailers just like you to create great solutions for you, bicycle retailers, every day that transform your shop into an environment that is easy to shop, cutting edge, and makes your competition green with envy. And not only do they help you design your store, they also make a full line of retail store fixtures that help you present your merchandise like pedals, tires, helmets in amazing ways. Fixturelab.com. Brian, how'd I do on that?
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am awesome. I mean, what can be said?
On a serious note, the Retail Design Flex is our bi-monthly feature specifically covering questions submitted to us on store design. So retailers from around North America are sending us their most pressing questions saying, Brian and Heather, help, I need your help. And not only do we get these questions via email, they send us videos, they reach out and text. Some retailers choose not to be revealed during our podcast episode, so we put them into the Retailer Protection Program. We've been doing this for over a year now. We've had tremendous success. Brian has helped hundreds of retailers transform their store. So yeah, Brian, how do you feel about today?
I am, I'm beside myself. The anticipation is killing me. I just wish we could dig in.
I know, but we have a little bit more. If people want to send us topics, are there certain things that we won't answer or certain topics that we want them to send? Or what are your thoughts about that, Brian? Anything go?
I would say that we will not answer human resources questions or accounting questions.
How about dance moves questions?
Dance moves we could handle, but accounting and human resources, I don't think so. Anything related to store design, merchandising, anything like that. In fact, I've prepared a couple questions that might get the thought process going here.
Okay.
You might send us a question like, I just found a jersey on a hanger in my store from 1999. What do I do? You might send in a question that's, I feel like I have to do something to the floor in my store, but I don't know what I have to do to my floor. Right?
That's a good question.
Which, okay, so that one could really turn into a whole episode of flooring day. Wouldn't that be exciting?
We did
Flooring.
We did ceiling day. Did
We did wall coverings. We didn't do flooring day though.
Oh.
We have mentioned flooring, of course, because it's part of every store, but okay, here's another one. I found a way to hang 150 bikes from my ceiling in the store. Customers will only have to duck every once in a while. That's a great idea, right?
Ding, 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 ding.
It's just things like that. There you go. Those are just getting the thought process going there, getting the ball rolling. Come on, send us questions.
Send us questions. We love it. And we do get some great questions. We do get some kind of off the wall questions, but they're all good. All questions are good.
Right.
Ryan, how are things going? I know you work with retailers every day. What's in the works over there?
They're doing good. We've got a couple new stores that we're working on. One's in Santa Fe and one's in Minnesota.
Nice.
Always exciting to work on a brand new space. We have this little map in our office that we put pins in every time we design a store, so we can see around the country everywhere. And there's a few states that don't have pins.
Wow.
And until recently, New Mexico was one of the states without a pin. Doesn't make any sense. We're in Denver, New Mexico. It's a slam dunk, but we hadn't done one until now.
I love that. That must have felt so good. So
Right.
you put the pin in when you start working with the retailer, or do you put the pin in when the project's complete?
Well, it depends on if we like them.
No, it doesn't. Ryan, we were gonna be honest today. Come
I
on.
know. We should go on to our real task
All right.
here.
But if we left you hanging on where to send your questions and photos, we want you to email them to us at design@nbda.com. So design@nbda.com. All right. So glad to hear things are going well. Glad to
Yep.
hear you're putting those pins in. All right, let's go top level. I always like to know, since you're in the world of design and merchandising, this is your wheelhouse. Any trends you're noticing, anything that you're like, oh, I got to keep my eye on that.
One trend, I guess, that I've been noticing for a little while now is, and this is in the bike industry, but also in the other categories that we help out that are mostly outdoor sports related, is retailers looking to economize or trying to save money on projects. Because they may be doing better this year, which most people, it sounds like, are doing better this year, but they're not willing to extend themselves a lot financially because they've been bitten over the last few years. Like, all the circumstances that we all know about have just made for a situation where people don't want to extend themselves financially. So when it comes to designing a store, remerchandising, fixtures, things like that, they're like, to a person almost, they're like, okay, let's talk about how we can do this the least expensive way possible.
I mean, I get that. Like you want to freshen up your store, you want it to be good, but then it's like, oh, I'm nervous about spending this money. I don't know what the future brings. It's been a
Yep.
roller coaster. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it's challenging at times, but to me, it's all the more reason why someone who's in that situation should lean on us. Send questions here or call me or work with a professional of any kind that's been through the ropes of, or been through the situation that you find yourself in, to avoid mistakes, because mistakes are the most costly way to do stuff.
You spend more money if you make mistakes. I just had a meeting with a retailer who worked with you, and he's built out his store. Actually, I don't know if he was in the protection program, but we
He
featured
was
him.
in the protection program.
So I saw the final pictures, and he did it on a budget and did a lot of work himself. And
Yep.
wow, the ideas you gave him, they looked like $1 million idea. Like it looked amazing in there. And I know
Yep.
he took time. And so
We're,
you're right, guidance, right?
I mean, we're always on the job of trying to figure out how to do things the least expensive way we can. But there's some corners you don't want to cut because it's going to ruin something. And some things you don't want to do just because it's going to cause problems down the road somewhere. So I don't know. I guess I'm just saying it's still valuable to work with someone who's a pro, who's been through all of these situations before, can really help you out so that you're not experimenting. So you're working with solutions that are proven.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, well, that's a good thing. So listen, if you are listening and you're thinking about redoing your store, want to make a change, want to freshen things up, understandable that you want to save money, but reach out. Brian, so MBDA members, I know they can call you and at least get a conversation going, and then you guys will kind of take it from there. But people can just call you, right? And like just reach
Absolutely.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
You
was thinking
can email me, brian@fixturelab.com.
Yeah.
You can give us a call. You can go to our website, fixturelab.com, and the phone number's there. any way you want to reach out. Call Heather in the middle of the night and ask
Oh, yeah.
for,
Sure, why not? All right, Brian, let's go on to today's topic. This is something I really want to get into. You know, we have our P2 groups within the MBDA. These are retailers who meet monthly, and they actually
love
meet.
P2 groups.
Awesome, right? And they actually get together twice a year and they go visit each other's store, and we give them a clipboard and we give them a check sheet, and they walk around and they analyze the whole store from the exterior to the interior to even the employees. So part of the exterior is, does your store signage, your exterior signage, communicate that you are in the business to sell bicycles? And it is amazing to me how often it doesn't. Like, we are visiting stores and it's just someone's name on a wall, or there's no bicycle, or like it's you don't think about it because it's something you're just in every day. But for someone who maybe is visiting you for the first time, they might not know. So I thought, and then there's also like, does your municipality have codes that prevent you from signage? Should your sign be up in the sky? Should it be closer to your building? Should it be on your building? Should it be lit up? You know where I'm getting. Like, I think we need to do signage day.
You think? Yes! Signage day.
I'm glad you're on the same page as me, Brian. I'm glad that you're just as,
How
yes.
about that?
So listeners, if you're tuning in while you're running or riding or in the car, please know that a version of this podcast we have on our YouTube site as well. Throughout today's podcast, Brian will be screen sharing. Right now, he's got this amazing billboard that says Signage Day with the NBDA and the Fixture Lab logo. So if you're driving, riding, doing something that you're not actually able to watch this, tune into the YouTube channel later. All right.
I still recommend looking at your phone while you're jogging
Or driving. I know Brian has said
or
before.
driving. I think that's always a good idea. This is my stuff is always so visual. You got to see the YouTube stuff just to take in all of the different things that the concepts that we talk about. Okay,
So,
shall I dig in?
yeah, I can tell you thought this was a great idea.
I I thought it was an amazing idea. Okay, so Heather, by the end of this conversation, this sentence, this paragraph, whatever it is that I'm going to read to you is going to make sense to you. How's that? So I'm going to read it. Heather, I was reviewing the sign criteria and I don't think my idea of using dye bond with external lighting is going to work. The landlord wants internal illumination, so I was thinking of using halo lit channel letters with 4-inch returns. But they don't want us to penetrate the facade any more than we have to, so now I'm feeling like a nice face lit channel letter mounted to a light gray raceway with daytime black and nighttime gray will be just the ticket.
I mean, the way that the person's putting this, I want to say, okay, go for it. But I haven't got my education yet, so I'm gonna hold my.
So when we're done in just a few minutes from now, this isn't going to be, you know, we're going to demystify all the lingo that's in here, and you're going to be an expert. Okay.
I love this.
Today, we're going to talk about types of signs, mostly exterior. I started to prepare for interior signs too, but there's like so that expands into so many different things. And just for the sake of time, we're going to talk mostly exterior. We're going to talk about key technology in signage. We're going to talk about a little bit about how signs are made and the differences between them, landlord sign criteria, sign code permits, and estimates. What we're not going to get into is the design, like you mentioned putting a bike on the sign so you can tell it's a bike shop. We're not going to get into the design aspects so much because I want to dig into the nuts and bolts of getting a sign done.
I love that.
There will be a quiz, Heather. So get ready. I know you love a good quiz when I
Our
put you in the
listeners who
spot.
tune in will know that I am not very good at quizzes.
All right, now also I'm going to continue our Retail Design Flex Challenge where we have to use these 3 words in today's conversation. We have to and primarily you, because I already know the word, so it wouldn't even be a challenge for me. So you need to weave in the word fetching, and you need to weave in the word Band-Aid, which could be used as the product or the expression. And the last word is bumfuzzle.
All right.
You know what all these mean, right?
Um, yes. Can I try to do something right now?
No, not at all. Bumfuzzle, here's the definition. Well, you asked, so I just said no. The definition of bumfuzzle is to confuse, perplex, or fluster. Used in a sentence, Elliot seemed a little bumfuzzled by the negativity.
Okay.
You can do it, right?
I'm wondering if you have a Band-Aid under that fetching shirt, and I'm unfuzzled by how you chose the 3 words.
God, man, you are good.
President.
All right. So on our last episode, I did this same thing, and one of the words was canoodle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I built in the word canoodle, and I really thought that the definition of canoodle was to kind of like team up with someone and think something through, like I'm going to canoodle this with you, that kind of thing. And we went with that. But the actual definition that I found out afterwards is to engage in amorous, embracing, caressing, and kissing.
Okay, so listeners, Brian is an expert at retail design and merchandising. The words are just
So
fun.
I hope that no one was hurt with the misuse of our words in the last episode.
Yeah, like what if I went up to a stranger and was like, can I canoodle about where the
I
bus
know.
stop
It
is?
was an innocent mistake. I feel horrible, and let's just get on with it. Okay, the retailer and sign maker protection program is engaged. Okay, so moving on, here we go. Let's talk some signage, baby. What do you think? Okay, let's go into some sign types first. And I'm going to show all kinds of examples. And a lot of these you're not going to care about typically, but it just helps to get a lay of the land here. Monument signs. Many stores will have monument signs to augment the primary sign on their space. And we've all seen these things before where you pay for a little square or a little rectangle on the sign and it has your logo or the name of your business out there. So that's a monument sign. Heather, while we're going through these things,
Mhm.
if a question occurs because you were just in P2 groups and you've been talking about signage and you talking to retailers all the time, if there's a question that you feel like you've heard lately, then let me know.
Okay, yep.
I don't expect that you're going to have a question about monument signs.
Well, I actually did.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
Bring it.
I was visiting a retailer in Texas and the monument sign was out front and it had a lot. It had like 30 different businesses on it.
Yep.
And the retailer felt like that their name on that sign was doing nothing because it was just like kind of washed in. If you have a monument sign and you're trying to make your brand stand out, is there a way to do that? Look at
It's
that.
hard.
Did
It's hard. Okay, so
bum fuzzled you?
yeah, I think you've bumfuzzled me. You can do a couple things that we see in this example here, actually. Murphy Express paid more, or they were allowed more space, so they were able to take up more than one of those slots. That would be the primary way that you're going to be able to get more kind of airtime on a sign like that.
Some of the retailers in the group suggested that the brand, well, let's say that Murphy Express is red, like their logo is normally red, that the brand changed their logo to be a color that would stand out more. Is that
Yeah,
bad?
that could be a good solution.
Okay, all
I
right.
mean, these things aren't going to make or break the business for you or anything like that. So I would do things. I would keep the contrast very high. Most of the time there's rules. Like for this sign, I happen to know that the predominant color had to be white on your little logo card there. So you couldn't change it to be red with reversed out logo. You had to use white with a colored logo on top of that. So I would still just keep the contrast as high as you can. Buy more spaces if you can do that. Make the colors bright if you can do that, if within their rules.
All right, I like that. Thanks, Brian.
Sure thing. Cabinet or box signs. We have all seen these all over the place. Nothing too inspired looking about them, but basically it's just a rectangular box or a square box. Usually something like 4 to 6 inches deep with lights inside and an acrylic face on it with a graphic. Seen those, right?
I've seen those. I don't know if I feel like those pop out as much, but I do see them. I'm thinking that they're used because of restrictions and coding, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
And they're not used because of restrictions and
They're
coding.
not?
No,
Oh,
it's both ways. It's like sometimes they're required and sometimes you're required not to
oh,
use them.
okay, gotcha, gotcha.
And you're going to see this style sign integrated into some of the other examples that we're going to see, like this one.
Oh, okay.
So pylon or pole signs, usually see these out by the road, and then you have a parking lot, and then you have the business, and they're, as you can imagine, since it's called a pole sign, it's on a pole. So there you go. So this is one of those cabinet signs or box signs on a pole,
That Bolero one is quite fetching.
isn't it? Look what you've done.
Oh,
Look what you've done. Okay, so
question. I do have a question. So
yes,
at a P2 meeting, the
yes.
retailers were talking about how tall these signs should be. Should it be taller than the building, taller than the guy next to you? Like, what's the optimal eyesight?
The easy answer is you don't get to decide.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because the sign code is certainly going to dictate what you can do.
Okay.
And in almost every case, the sign code is going to do something that's more conservative than you would like it to be. Like everybody would probably like the Bolero sign where you've got this tall, impressive looking structure that really grabs a whole bunch of attention. But a lot of times the code just says you can't go any higher than 10 feet or something. And so it's going to come up later, but for sure, the first thing that you should do is check with the local sign professional, the local sign company, see what the code says, and they're going to help you like that, figure out how tall that can be. The placement of that is another thing that's determined by the sign code. So
Okay.
blade signs,
Oh, these might.
right? Blade signs are kind of blade shaped, thus the name. They usually attach to a wall, but sometimes it goes onto like a roof structure someplace, and it's meant to go perpendicular to the walking path of someone on the street below, or on the sidewalk below, or in this parking lot or whatever. These are implemented a lot of the time in coordination with the main sign that's on the face of the building.
Brian, I know we're talking about signs and we're going to talk about codes, but is there a general rule of thumb how many times or how many signs you should have outside? Like, should people see the name of your business once, twice, 3 times? Is 4 times too many?
Well, that so rarely is a problem that you have to solve
Okay,
because of the sign code again.
okay, all
When you
right,
get through the landlord sign criteria and the city's sign code, chances are you're going to be limited to less than you wanted to do anyway.
all right.
That's the odds. If you don't have any restrictions whatsoever, then sure, I guess there's a point where too many signs is a bad thing. But I don't think I've ever encountered that problem.
All right.
We're always stopped before you're always wishing that you could have another one of these things someplace else or on a different face, and then you can't because of the code. But it is great. I mean, think about the different ways that people approach the business. You've got the front of the building, and then you've got people walking down a sidewalk. So different facings, different ways to face the sign, so you catch different people, maybe even something on the ground if that's appropriate in your area. How about an awning sign?
Yes. I
I've,
feel like a lot of retailers have awning signs.
yeah, it's pretty common, right? I don't know this bike shop, so I put them in the retailer protection program. I know that their shop is sitting on the street and we can see them, but I don't know.
It
Uh,
looks like you put a Band-Aid over the first name.
Ooh, yes, nicely done. I tried my hardest to bumfuzzle you, but I haven't done it. Channel letters. One of the most common types of signage that we see on buildings. And I've included a couple familiar examples for us here. They're most of the time they're illuminated from within. They are a dimensional letter, depends on the size of the sign, but it's, inches deep, usually starting at 3 inches or so and going up from there. They are constructed out of usually aluminum and kind of riveted together. And they have an acrylic face on them that's colored or not. And then they attach to the wall via pins. And I'm going to show this.
Return trim cap. Okay.
Okay, so these are the parts of a channel letter. There's the face of the letter, which is usually acrylic, like I said, and it's usually lit behind it. Then there's the trim cap, which keeps that face plate in place. And then there's the return, which is the sides of the letters. Okay.
Mhm.
Here's your first quiz, Heather.
Okay.
What is the color of the returns on Bike Works?
Bike works. They look gray to me,
I think that's a pretty good guess.
or white.
Yeah, it might be white too.
Okay.
They've also incorporated in their sign the angled shape that freedom is on, and then the same kind of angle that the words are on. That's a raceway, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Okay.
Ryan, when you asked me quizzes, my heart rate jumped like 20 beats per minute.
Man, that was an easy one too. That was a super easy one. Wait until you get to the final exam.
Right, right.
Don't forget painted signs. The oldest technology for signs. We can paint on the side of a building sometimes, and that's awesome sometimes because you usually get, there's a certain kind of an aesthetic to it that isn't proper for everybody, but you can usually see the wall through the paint because you're looking at texture and stuff, and that can be really cool.
They really classed up Kentucky Fried Chicken. Is that the Colonel Sanders? He looks
Yeah.
great. He looks so
What?
great there.
It doesn't seem like you're visiting the store very much. But yes, that is the current version. Painted signs are rarely able to be used. There's, if you're in a strip center, you're not going to be able to paint the outside of the building because it's usually just glass anyway. But sometimes you have the side of a building that you can utilize, and that comes into play. So we just got to keep that in mind. Dimensional letters are they have some dimension. They aren't flat. They're not stuck to the wall like a sticker. They are dimensional, and a lot of times they're spaced off of the wall. So if someone says a dimensional letter, that's what they mean, is this kind of thing. And they can come in all kinds of different materials, like this one is acrylic. So this is acrylic that's been painted. So they cut it, they polish the edges of the acrylic, and then they paint it, and it comes out really pretty, really clean, really refined looking,
It looks really high end.
right?
Mhm.
So if that's part of the aesthetic that you're looking for, those are the kind of things design wise that we're thinking about. It costs more to do a painted acrylic sign for sure than it does to cut this same shape out of, like, say, PVC and not paint it. But it adds to the whole aesthetic of that brand.
It's very,
You can also do
very
this same thing outside. A lot of times, if you're going to build something like this, the sign company will recommend aluminum as opposed to acrylic for its stability in the elements. But it would look exactly the same if it were in aluminum. We can also do steel or aluminum dimensional signs that don't have a painted finish, that are just like brushed aluminum, or raw steel like this one up here. This is also raw looking. It has a process applied to it that turns the steel kind of blackish. That would be considered a dimensional sign because that's cut through so you can see the counter behind it. Pretty cool stuff, right?
I mean, there's a lot of options. Again, you're giving me an education that, I think something so simple, but as we go through it, it's like, wow, like wall covering, there's just so many options. You really do need to talk to a professional.
Darn right. All right, remember in our
Dye bond.
story,
Yeah,
yeah, in the story at the very beginning, dye bond. This is
yeah.
what dye bond is.
I feel so close to it now.
It is aluminum on both sides, and then it's plastic in the middle, or polyethylene. So it's kind of almost like foam core, only it's plastic in the middle, aluminum on the outsides, and you can do colors and smooth finishes like chrome looking stuff, or you can do a brushed aluminum is the most popular use of dye bond that I have seen. And it's very cuttable. You can cut it on a router so that you can do complex shapes like that.
It's pretty cool.
And relatively speaking, it's not very expensive, and it's stable for outside. But I guess the drawback to this is you're limited to a thin sheet. Dye bond, as far as I know, doesn't come in like 1/2 inch or 1 inch thick. You're only going to be limited to something that's in that 1/4 inch kind of a range.
It looks really professional. Like it looks really high end though.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to, like the Pedigo sign there, it's a great way to do that kind of a sign quickly, easily, and inexpensively. Push through letters.
Oh, see, I know the Chipotle one.
So push through letters are literally pushed through. This is the best image for that right here. It's a thick acrylic letter that's been cut and has a little flange on the back side of it, and it's actually pushed through a metal face on a sign. And then usually lit from behind that. So the whole letter kind of glows just like you see in this.
Mhm.
Pretty cool look.
It's sharp. That's sharp.
Yeah, it's a really upscale kind of look. It's not the cheapest sign by any stretch, but it's a great way to go if you're looking to bump up the the class factor there. How about some neon? We all know neon. Traditional neon doesn't get used all that much anymore because it's not as stable as many of the other options that we have these days. Like it's fragile, you can break the tubes, and it has a shorter lifespan than most of the options that we have for other kinds of sign lighting these days. But it's still, there's some occasions when it's just the perfect solution because it adds that design aesthetic that you're looking for that enhances your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use it inside and outside, of course. Then there's also faux neon, which you can do some really surprising things these days. Even if you go to Amazon, you can order fake neon signs that are custom to your needs. So you can come up with, if you wanted your sign to say good vibes only, you could do this kind of a thing in fake neon right there, and they're really inexpensive. I don't know how they pull it off. It's basically an LED technology. So it's not a traditional, there's no gas in the tubes or anything like that. It's a plastic flexible channel that's being illuminated by LEDs, but it looks very neon.
Very cool.
So you could, if it's a service sign like this one we did here, you can, in some small spots, it's not the kind of, I don't think you're going to use this for your primary sign outside, but I don't know, maybe you're going to hang a sign in the window that says you're open, or a sign in the window that says we work on e-bikes or whatever. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, I think it also creates, when you use neon, I think it creates like a focal point. Is that true, Brian? Like it draws the eye, or it can?
Well, what draws the eye? It's just usually bright.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's lots of colors. The contrast is really nice on that kind of a sign. So it does kind of pull you in that way,
Okay, all right.
as opposed to like a steel sign that doesn't have a bunch of bright color to it, but it's a different aesthetic too. I threw in window graphics, and most of the time the primary sign for an exterior solution isn't going to be a window graphic, but we got to keep vinyl that you can apply to a window, or you could even paint on a window. We should keep that in mind. And one of the key things here is you shouldn't necessarily count on being able to use your windows in a lot of environments because of sign code or because of the landlord sign criteria. So we got to be careful about that. I wouldn't just run and install this kind of sign assuming that you can do it. I would check with people first.
Gotcha.
All right, so here's some key technologies. Halo lit and face lit. So obviously halo lit creates this halo of light around the letter. The lights are built inside that letter and they aim back at the wall. So it creates that cool kind of halo look.
It's really nice.
And then this is face lit. So the face panel of that is translucent and the lights within that. It is possible to do face lit and halo lit at the same time. It's a pretty expensive letter, pretty expensive type of sign to build, but you can do it. External lighting, since we're talking about lighting of letters, we shouldn't forget that you can do like Anthropology is doing here and just do a metal dimensional sign and then put gooseneck lights over the top of it or something. Or sometimes there's already light existing in your location that's going to light up that kind of a sign already anyway. So you could just take advantage of that and put something that doesn't have internal lighting built in.
I like want to think like the customer doesn't notice, but we do notice. We just don't realize that we notice, I think. Like,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't make this decision. Like the shopping center you're going into says you're going to use external lighting on your sign because that's part of our code. So you don't even get to make that decision. Other times you do get to make that decision, and then it becomes something of an aesthetic look. Like, you can tell that the appeal of these from a design perspective are different than those neon signs. It's different than an internally lit channel letter. So you just got to think about what's appropriate for your brand at that point.
Right.
Pin mounting. This is the way primarily, like a lot of channel letters are made this way. Dimensional signs are made this way. Even some flat panel signs, things like that. There are pins or studs on the backside of that sign that slide into holes in the wall. And then there's a spacer, usually. The spacer pulls that sign a little bit off the wall to make it feel dimensional and nice. You can also use the pins without the spacers and it just goes flat against the wall. Primarily what the pins or studs are for is to keep that sign in place and keep it from falling off the wall. Because if you just glued a sign to the wall with the elements and temperature changes, things like that, it's going to pop off eventually. But the pins or studs keep it in place. And you can actually, I mean, if it's an exterior sign, you're not going to probably do this yourself, but it is feasible, especially inside the store, to mount these kind of signs yourself. with the direction of someone like us who's done it before. It's not very hard. Raceway. Do you know what a raceway is?
Is it a box built to mount sign letters and hide electrical components?
I don't know how you came up with that, but yes.
You don't realize
So,
it's there, but it's there. I see it. Very
right,
cool.
you see them all the time, like all the time. And you rarely take in the fact that there's a box back there. But a lot of times that's necessary because you've got a brick wall and you can't drill 100 holes through the brick wall and power each of those letters individually. So you need a raceway to run all of the wiring through and attach all the letters to.
Hmm.
At the same time, a lot of, I think the example that we're going to use for the sign criteria says that you can't use a raceway because of aesthetics. So you got to pay attention and not assume anything in this whole sign conversation. Shall we talk about landlord sign criteria, sign codes, permits, and estimates?
I mean, I think we need to because it sounds like a lot of that's going to dictate what we're doing.
It sure does. Okay, so the sign code is administered by your building department of your town, your city. So check with them, or just like this green note says, my first recommendation is that you hire a local sign professional right away when you start thinking about a sign, because they understand the local code. They may even know the people who are going to be doing the approving of the proposed plan that you have. So it just pays to work with the people who know what they're doing. They'll help you through. Sign codes are tough to understand. They're weird to read. But they're going to limit you on things like the height of the sign or the letters or whatever, the height that it is off the ground, the different types of signs that you can use. A lot of times there's illumination limits that you need to play into, or they need to be turned off and on at certain times of the day. All kinds of things that might be controlled by the sign code. So talk with a local sign company, and anybody who is local to your area is going to be very familiar. Make sense?
Excellent. Yes.
Permits. You're going to end up having to get a permit. So just expect it. To do a sign, you're going to do a permit, and usually they're like 50 to 150 bucks, something like that.
Mhm.
Not too bad. They can get more expensive depending on what you're doing. And your sign company, again, is going to apply for that. And sometimes you can't even apply for a permit because they know that you're not a professional and you don't know what you're doing. So just count on your sign company helping you with the permit. All right, so this is part of an actual estimate for a sign. And I wanted us to look, now that you know some terminology, this isn't all that scary once you understand what's in here. There is a layout and proof. This company charges a proof fee that is just them putting together the art for the sign that we're going to do.
Sound
They're
too.
they're charging you to submit for the permit. They don't put the cost of the permit on here. I'm not sure why, but they didn't. There's another fee for a permit acquisition on there. And then here's the actual cost of the sign itself. This one had 18 letters, or I mean, sorry, 11 letters that are 18 by 18 inches approximately. The face of them is polycarbonate, which is like acrylic. It's aluminum letters. They've got white LEDs inside with power supplies, studs and spacers for the letters. So you know what all these things are now.
Now I do. Yeah, I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, look at that. The return depth is 3 inches larger. Yeah, so I got it.
You're just a pro now.
Pop quiz.
Oh, I'm going to come back to the pop quiz. Hold on. I want to show you sign criteria because we're almost wrapped up here. All right, I'm going to pop this in here. Can you see that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so this is a real document from a real shopping center. And this is their criteria. And I brought up this one because it does a pretty good job of covering all the bases that you're going to see. It's going to give you an introduction that basically says, here's why we're doing what we're doing with our sign code here, our own special sign code. And so the sign criteria for your landlord works in addition to the sign code of the city. Like you have to satisfy both. So there's a lot of limits a lot of times on signs. In this case, there are things like the red, green, and yellow cannot be used as primary colors in your sign.
Oh, very specific.
Yeah, and you can't do a PVC sign, and you can't do vacuum formed letters. And then it gives you examples of ones that have been rejected.
Like, why would you try to use red, green, or yellow? Like,
Well, what if it's part of your brand though?
well, it's gonna get rejected.
Well, now you know this since you have the sign or the sign criteria, but you didn't know that to begin with. So you got to get this stuff right up front from your landlord. And even if there isn't a sign criteria document, chances are your landlord has preferences. Like they're going to say, we want you to do a certain kind of a sign so it matches with the rest of our development or whatever.
That makes sense, I think.
So, you got to pay attention to those. And then they also almost always suggest things that have been approved. So you can see the kind of inspiration for what's going on
It
or
looks a
what they
little more
want to go.
looks a little more upscale.
Yeah. And they, if it's an upscale center, they don't want cheesy looking signs everywhere.
Makes sense, you know?
And then it goes through different types of constructions of signs that they'll approve or that are, valid to them or fit the look that they're going for, including in this case, ones that are externally lit with some lights.
This is a nice guide that they provide to their
Right? Isn't it?
Mhm.
Like this is a great thing to just get. And it might inspire a new direction for you.
Like I should get a copy, right? And just
You should get a copy right now. All right, so that's what sign criteria looks like. All right, we're wrapping up. You ready for your pop quiz?
okay.
All right, hold on, here we go. Heather, please tell me what we're looking at. Tell me about the construction of this sign.
Well, it looks like a black 3-inch return on the
Mm-hmm.
uh reverse lighted. No. It says Jacobs and it's blue.
What type of illumination are we looking at?
I'm bumfuzzled. This is
It is halo lit
okay, it's halo lit. That's what
and it's face lit at the same time.
this is a trick quiz.
No, not really. I mean, this is very common, so.
Yes, it is.
Well, there you go.
All right, is the pop quiz over or is there
The
only
pop quiz is over. You've done it.
No, Brian's like, I can't ask you anymore because you're embarrassed.
Oh, that was it. That was the only thing I'd built in.
I love sign day. Sign day, there's so much to signage. And what I took out of that is like we could sit through and talk about it for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. And if I was looking to redo my signage or moving into a new location, besides just going to the municipality and figuring out what I'm allowed to do, I would get an expert to help me because there's so many options and it seems like
Heck
I
yes.
a lot of money and maybe not put that money in the right spot. So this was fun. This was a
Right?
lot of fun. There's a lot of options.
I
I
know.
don't, Brian, you're pretty awesome. You're pretty smart. You got a lot
Oh,
of
stop. Stop.
all right, listeners. So like we said earlier, if you want us to address any questions you have, it could
Send
be
them.
specific things like how long has that jersey been and what do you have to do with that jersey? I don't know what Brian was talking about earlier, but anything about your store, it could be the floor, it could be about how to merchandise the entryway, it could be exterior, interior, send them, design@nbda.com. Listen, if you're looking to make a change in your store, you want to just do a remodel, even if you want to do it on the budget, on the cheap, call or email Brian. And you can, if you don't want to worry about finding Brian's number, just email design@nbda.com and that goes to Brian. So you're all good. Let him give you some guidance. I'm telling you, it's just the way to do it. You also help MBDA members with a special offer. So besides just being a great, awesome guy who will give you some advice, and then you can decide if you want to work with him for your full project, Fixture Lab offers NBDA members a great deal on their fixtures. So you can save $100 to $500 off a fixture order, depending on the size. So again, before you go and just randomly order fixtures, email or call Brian. He'll tell you what you need and help you through it. We're all looking to make sure that you, retailer, have the best things, to make your store the best, and you have all the solutions and you're doing it in a way that is best suited to your needs. Brian, what else? What did I miss?
Nothing. We're good.
Okay, head over to YouTube. You can
Happy
see.
Signage Day.
Yeah, happy Signage Day. Brian, always a pleasure. See you back here soon. Thanks, listeners.
Bye. See you.
Thank you for listening to Bicycle Retail Radio. This podcast is designed specifically for the bicycle industry, dedicated to strengthening our retailers and cycling community. If it is your first episode, we urge you to take the time and listen to our past episodes.